right, welcome to the Nexus Podcast. I'm here with Mike Holcomb, face-to-face at S4.
Oh.
First time meeting you. Pleasure. How are you doing?
In person.
Yeah. In person,
yeah.
yeah.
No, it's good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
No,
of
I
course.
Really
So
appreciate
I know we did one of these probably about a year ago now, and
Okay.
I know we spent a lot of time talking about kind of the educational material that you're putting up online.
Sure.
Maybe bring us up to date on what you're doing and what's changed in the last few months. I know you're constantly updating some of the content you're putting out there.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big focus for me. It's all about growing awareness and education, whether it's for owners and operators or whether it's people that want to get into the field or people working in the field. And so, I think it's just, we can't have enough. And so I'm always, trying to do my part and contribute whether new content. I'm just about to release an updated version of my Getting Started in OT ICS Cybersecurity course. So I'm really excited about that to help, people get into primarily people getting into the field, whether they're in engineering and want to learn more about OT cyber, or it's folks from IT cyber and want to get in. So
obviously very relevant, very timely. I mean, there's a lot of IT people that are very new to managing this stuff, so
Right,
I'm sure you're
sure.
getting a lot of uptick on it.
Lot of, it really, especially the last year, the IT CISOs reaching out, or even just, directors and managers that, hey, I run IT, right, for a manufacturing company. Now all of a sudden I'm responsible for this OT security thing. What do I do, right? Where do I start? And it's like, oh, well, here, I can
It's
help.
just a little intimidating.
Right. So I try to tell them it'll be okay, right? And
Right.
it's okay. Here's some links. Here's some videos to watch, and here's a couple things to read, and reach out if you have questions, type of thing.
So as I mentioned, we're here at S4, and you gave a talk on a converged actor framework, as you call it. Pretty relevant, again, just kind of this intersection of hacktivists and kind of how the state actors are leveraging these groups. What prompted you to look at this? I mean, an increase in activity, something else?
Yeah, no, a couple things. I preach a lot about, and this was really, I think, the main theme in the presentation. It really just came down to a lot of organizing. I've been very fortunate to work in some of the world's largest control system environments. I've been in some of the smallest, right, and everything in between.
Yeah.
And for me, there's this commonality, this big miss I see where most environments, right, the people working there, they're just not taking the time to, even if it's like 5, 10, 15 minutes a week, to sit and look at, hey, what's going on in the world, in the outside world, outside of our plant, right, that could impact us, right? If I'm watching the news and looking at incidents that are occurring, especially those incidents that are happening in environments just like mine, right? If I'm in their shoes, and we need to be asking the questions, right? Can this impact us? And if so, what do we need to do, right, today, or hopefully very soon, to be able to prevent it from happening to us? And I just don't see that happening in a lot of organizations. And then it really is a gut punch when, I find out that, they get hit 6 months down the road. And it's like, man, if you're just paying attention to what happened, like to your biggest competitor, which you knew, right, happened. Let's say, like Jaguar Land Rover goes down for, 5 weeks, right, for global manufacturing. That should be a massive lesson, not only for everybody in OT, cybersecurity, and in operations, but just think for the manufacturers related to like automotive and I work with a lot of like massive, large car part manufacturers. So it's just taking again that 5, 10, 15 minutes a week, just seeing what's out there, and hey, is it something we need to pay attention to? Could this impact us? There's all lessons we can always learn, from really any incident, no matter what sector we're in. And let's come up with a game plan to protect ourselves in the event that that comes our direction.
I mean, it's great advice because, if somebody in your industry gets hit that badly, even if it's an opportunistic attack, just understanding, what happened, how it happened is hugely important, as I'm sure you see.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's just, it just drives me crazy when you see so many environments get hit when there was no reason to.
Right. So tell me a little bit about the framework. And I know you looked at a lot of different threat actor groups and what they're doing, but there's different levels in terms of effectiveness and speed and so forth. Talk to me a little bit about it.
Yeah, the idea was, and it sounds much more fancier than it actually is in reality. So I think initially it was a conversation with Dale and wanting to do something for S4 this year. And one thing that really has caught my attention, probably over the last 2-3 years, is as we have more evidence of state actors aligning with hacktivists. So most in particularly, we have Russia Sandworm, right, where we have direct evidence that shows that they have, at least at certain points, directed the activities of a hacktivist group known as the Cyber Army of Russia Reborn. So when I go and talk with owners and operators, or just anybody in OT or people coming into the field, right, there's a lot of misconceptions of who's doing the attacking and why. And so when you get into those conversations about, well, who's going to attack us? There's still, especially owners and operators, there's still so many that are so set and we're only being targeted by state actors, right? And we don't have anything that Russia or China or the United States wants. So if that's the case, then we don't need to do anything about OT cybersecurity, right? So it's really this awareness and education game. So first we're trying to get over there are more out there than just state actors, because we have hacktivists and ransomware operators and lone wolves and script kiddies and that are impacting OT environments. And then I get a little bit more fascinated when you look at it. I think I talk in my talk about growing up on James Bond, right, and being very fascinated with the spy angle. So there's that part of me, especially that 12-year-old kid that watched my first James Bond movie, Roger Moore, View to a Kill, right?
Sure.
And just the spy aspect. So I love, the research, right? And then when you learn the attribution, it's okay, we have state actors, and now again we have them where they're lining up with hacktivists. So state actors are normally thought to be we don't see them often, right? Very low frequency type of incidents, but when they do hit, it's a very high impact, very high impact, or at least the potential, right? They usually get caught or prevented, from actually pulling the trigger, right? So there's the potential for high impact. Where hacktivists, we see them as high frequency, right? We see them pretty much every day, it seems now, but when they do hit, it's okay, that we didn't lose operations. We had to take an hour or two to restore a system. Whoop-de-doo, right? It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But now as you start thinking, we have state actors aligning with hacktivists and ransomware, group operators especially, that moving into the future, are we on this path to get to where we have high frequency and high impact? And I think there's a case to be said that could be coming to at least a degree, right? And we're not prepared for what's happening today as far as incidents go, let alone being prepared for what could potentially be coming down the road.
And what do you think's driving this alignment? I mean, is it just kind of fear that the Russian intelligence is reaching out or leveraging these folks, or is there some kind of quid pro quo, we'll keep you out of jail kind of thing if you work for us? I mean,
yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, there's definitely a lot to unpack there. So, Russia has always been known to turn a blind eye to, cyber attackers and cyber criminals, right? Putin had a nephew or cousin that ran one of the largest kind of hacker underground collectives for so long, and their big money was child porn, right? I mean, which is the most evil thing in the face of the planet. But here they're allowing them to proliferate because, we'll just turn a blind eye,
right.
And then they, it just goes on to cyber criminals, operating out of Russia. And I remember, watching attacks, after the invasion in Ukraine, that Russia doesn't even care anymore, right? They're just coming at you from Russian IP addresses,
sure.
right? It's they just don't even try to to hide. But yeah, I think Russia's just trying to exploit every avenue, and they've always had that relationship, especially in the IT cyber realm.
Yeah.
And I think that's just transitioning also to the OT.
Is it a bit of a death by a thousand cuts kind of thing where you slowly erode trust in services or government's ability to protect us, something like that? Is that part of the motivation as well?
It could be, right?
Yeah.
I mean, of course, the Russians are always trying to angle in on, and I'm not I should say, preface this by saying, like, I'm not a threat analyst. I don't even try to pretend to be one. I do read a lot of research, though, and whatever I can get my hands on. So, the Russians are very well known for trying to take any angle they can, kind of that psychological warfare component, and of course trying to get blackmail data for on all of their targets. But yeah, it's kind of, I think they're just at this point trying to really use every angle they can. But especially when you look at, like, with Cyber Army of Russia Reborn, it's you have this hacktivist group acting as a front, right? So you're thinking as a defender, we're just being targeted by a hacktivist group. Whoop-de-doo, I'm not going to worry about it. But really, behind the scenes, it's a state actor that's
right,
or a government, really, at the end of the day, pulling the strings. And
adding to that, is there something to the fact that a lot of these attacks are very low tech, or you don't need vulnerabilities? It's just a lot of this stuff is internet facing, especially on the OT side.
Yeah, it's a good question. That's kind of partly where I took this converged actor framework idea, was when you look at, you have what I say is like the front stage, or and then what's happening backstage behind the curtain, like with the Wizard of Oz, or I'm a big foodie, right? So I always think of, we go to a nice restaurant, we sit down, right? You have the ambiance and the great service and the incredible food, but behind the scenes, right, I always think of like Gordon Ramsay, right, yelling at the the chefs, and it's just complete chaos, right? But so it's, what do we see in the public view, right, versus what's going on behind the scenes. And so you start to look at from two different aspects. So you see, okay, the attackers that are targeting us, but is it a hacktivist group getting their mission, right, or their kind of commands being told to do by a state actor? Also, then it gets into this, okay, well, what if the hacktivist has a target that they're going after in particular, and they're struggling? Mm-hmm. Like, does the state actor step in and help them? And do they lend them knowledge, tools, right? I mean, here's a couple of 0-day exploits, right, that we have sitting on the shelf. And I think that's definitely a very real possibility.
Right.
Others have already talked about those instances, probably have already been happening. So you have, like, again, the backstage where you have, like, state actors, or again, we can also say just more advanced types of, evil operators that are out there, and then they're working with these other groups, and they're lending them, again, that knowledge or the tools or other resources to be able to have more of an impact on a target. Yeah. And again, at the end of the day, you're still thinking, it's a hacktivist, right? Oh, whoop-de-doo, but behind the scenes, there's a lot more going on.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, at the risk of victim shaming, there's a lot of internet-facing OT out there that's not exactly securely online. I mean,
it's true, and I've been watching this since even actually slightly before Stuxnet, and so probably 2008, 2000, ever since Shodan came online. So I think that was about 2008, 2009, right? Looking to see what's out there, and the numbers dropped dramatically over the years. And it actually seems over the last year or so, we got to a point where I think we kind of hit the bottom of the barrel, and I've actually started to see the numbers slightly increase. So we're going the wrong way. Right? So there's this number that's still out there, and we're actually seeing a few more kind of like trickle in.
Yeah.
So it's still, we have a lot more to do on the awareness and the education, and hopefully, folks don't have to find out the hard way that, they have an asset that's exposed to the internet.
Right.
Right. And hopefully they,
Yeah. Just to go back to the discussion of kind of thinking about these groups in silos, for example, just I know in your talk you kind of split it up: state actors, hacktivists, ransomware groups. How does that impact defenses? I mean, is that the prevalent way that organizations are thinking about adversaries? And probably shouldn't be, but
Yeah, I try to take a more realistic approach, and I try not to go down the fear, uncertainty, doubt road, you know. So it's like, let's focus on what's realistic. I think there's an idea that, yes, we, in the back of our head, especially in larger environments, we have to understand, sure, what a state actor is capable of and what could happen, right? Could an attacker get in, like, cause an explosion and kill people? Yes, we keep those types of worst case scenarios in the back of our head, but let's spend most of our time talking about, okay, what's more realistic to happen, right? State actor causing an explosion to kill people, or is it going to be ransomware in the IT environment taking down IT, which then has an impact in the OT environment, right? So it's not as fun or as sexy to talk about, but at the end of the day, that's the most realistic scenario. So it goes back to, you need to be watching what's going on out in the real world, especially with those in your sector, right, in your field and what you're doing, watching and see what's happening. Ask, what's happening? Could this happen to us? And if so, what do we need to do about it? Again, and a lot of these incidents, right, it's not $1 million fix to address the issue. It's usually very low cost, right, to especially get started. So you can have a high impact, lowering your risk. Again, if you're just paying just a little attention, and of course, more importantly, taking action.
Yeah, and I mean, it probably should cause organizations to look at their threat modeling too. I mean, not everybody's a state actor target, but
right. And I said that it's kind of, I still see that, especially with leaders, or if you're working like with an IT CISO, right? The vast majority of IT CISOs that I've met with, right, they're really great in working in the IT environments, but they can't spell OT, right? And that's no fault to their own. And some are really doing a great job of getting up to speed as quickly as possible. Yeah. There are also a lot out there that aren't, right? And so it's another, it goes back to awareness and education, and hey, I got a free YouTube course that you need to watch, of course, in all of your spare time, right? But it will give you an idea of the basics to help protect the environment, especially for those IT CISOs or other IT leaders that all of a sudden, I'm now responsible for OT. What the heck is this thing, and where do I start? So you get a lot of that.
Just going back to your framework and kind of the structure of it, how would you like to see people use it? Who should be using it? How? What are the outcomes they should be looking for?
So by the time I got through doing some of the additional work and the research and trying to come up with this idea of the framework, and that it really boiled down to, again, more awareness and education, right? Looking to see what's going on out there, looking to see, is this going to impact us? And if so, what can we do about that? And honestly, and I've done this with ChatGPT and Gemini, and you can say, hey, I work in water treatment, right? And talk about, or tell me about the top 5-10 incidents that have happened in the last couple of years. Tell me what happened, right? Ask it. Tell me what happened. Right? Tell me, how would I, protect against these types of attacks in my environment? Create an action list. And you know what? It's like 99% of the time, it's actually really, really quality responses, right? So especially for environments that they don't have all of the resources in the world, right? Sure. Especially the small, medium-sized environments, limited budgets, right? You can use free tools like that, right, to give you an idea. You don't have to pay a consultant to come in and tell you the same thing that ChatGPT and Gemini, is going to tell you. I know that's a whole other conversation.
That's another podcast,
right? But yeah. So it's just paying attention to what's going on, understanding that threat landscape is evolving, and it doesn't matter who you are, what sector, you are a target, right? It's just a matter of when the attackers get to you. Right? They could be in your network today. Maybe it's in 6 months, but they're coming. It's only just like in IT, right? We always say, like, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when.
Yeah.
And that's the same in OT.
This may be an obvious answer, but what's putting OT in control systems in the crosshairs of these groups at the moment? Is it simply connectivity? Is it just, what's
That's
happening?
one. There was a big shift that we had in the landscape with Colonial Pipeline.
Yeah.
Right? Because before Colonial Pipeline, it was only pretty much state actors that we worried about and talked about because they were the ones that had the engineering knowledge. So if they got into an OT environment, they could reverse engineer the environment to have an impact on the process. Colonial Pipeline showed, hey, you don't have to be a state actor to have an impact in OT. You can take down the United States' largest gasoline pipeline, right, by just deploying ransomware and burning IT down to the ground. Right? Same thing essentially happened to Jaguar Land Rover, right? They had systems in IT that they needed to run operations. And so you lose IT, you lose operations. And so that's really looking at just kind of this shift in the landscape. And that at that point, that's why hacktivists are out there coming after OT, right? That's why the ransomware operators, they're coming, and either they're coming after OT directly or, again, like Colonial Pipeline, hey, I don't even have to understand like engineering or how I have an impact. I just know, hey, if I burn down IT or if I'm in a position where you don't pay my ransom and I burn it down, right, you're more than likely to pay. So you have a lot more attackers coming for a lot more visibility, right? There's more money for ransomware operators. If I'm a hacktivist, right, I want to make a lot of noise, right? I want to be in the news. So there's a lot more opportunity there than that they have a lot of times now in IT. So,
and what's your opinion in terms of disruption versus damaging attacks, for example? Is there more immediate value anyway in disrupting operations, disrupting critical services than, dumping a wiper out there and destroying computers?
Yeah, I think overall they're still looking at disruption. So that's because hacktivists, that's going to make noise, right? If I'm a ransomware operator, that's going to get me paid quicker, and so I can just move on to the next victim.
Right.
So I think it's mostly about that. But we did see in Poland, right? You had a state actor, right? Take out 30 substations, right? Wiped all the machines, right? Very, very, very trademark signature of the Russians. Right, and that was another one. It's a great example, though, of, hey, are you watching what's going on out in the real world? Even if you're in water treatment, right, you can see what happened in Poland in the grid and say, oh, the attackers got in through weak edge devices with firewalls. Okay, do we have those in our environment? Oh, we do. Are we vulnerable? What can we do about it? And then
default credentials, right?
And that was right. That's the other one, right? Killing off IEDs and RTUs inside the environment because they had default credentials, right? And so it's like, oh, do we have any of those? We don't know. Well, we need a program in place to figure out, whether you do or not. And that, it really just comes down to asking those questions if we're watching to see what's going on.
Mm-hmm. So before we wrap up, I know attribution was also part of your presentation and your discussion. I always wonder, do victims really care, or do they just want these guys off the network? I know if you're a military or defensive agency, government agency, it's a different conversation. But for the enterprise, just give me your thoughts there.
Yeah, part of it, and this was one of the things I have seen come up more than a few times as well. But that's where I started the talk off talking about me as a little kid. James Bond is absolutely fascinated at 12 years old. It was also just before that I saw War Games, right? And with War Games, that's when I got into computers and cybersecurity, and I've always carried that through my career. And so whenever I've responded to a lot of incidents like in IT and in some in OT now. And when you look at from an attribution perspective, right? Does it matter if I know who it is, right? If we're in like hour 2 of an incident and the plant is down, right? And the executives, right? The two questions they're always going to ask is, when are we back up?
Yeah.
And who is it? Right? They want to know. I'm like, it doesn't matter.
No.
Right? We just want them off the network, right? We want to figure out how they got in, right, what they've been doing so we can get them off and reverse everything that they've done and make sure we're safe and we keep running.
Right.
Right? That's all that matters. But like you mentioned, now down the road, right, from a strategic perspective, right, whether, sure, at a national level or even those companies, right, if you do, like I've been in environments like where we work with companies like a Dragos or a Mandiant, right, where you get the kind of the feedback where, okay, it was the state actor, right, and then you can use that to get a better understanding of that adversary, why they're targeting you, right, maybe you even saw particularly what they were doing in the environment, and then it just goes back to, okay, how do we shift our program and what do we need to do to prevent this from happening in the future? So,
all right, so last question. I mean, we've been talking about offensive capabilities throughout most of this conversation. Let's talk about defending. How do you defend against hacktivists that, the TTPs vary widely, probably. I mean, even if the state actors involved, there's a bit of variance there as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm very practical. I think I always focus on the basic fundamentals, and then I literally created the acronym for BASIC, so BASIC.
Yeah.
So I always talk about backup and recovery, most importantly, because I see too many environments get hit. At least you want to get back up and running, right? At least. So absolutely. Then when we talk about asset management, right, which we're always talking about, right, so knowing what's in the environment, because then that helps us when we get to secure network architecture, right, things like segmentation, having the firewall between IT and OT, which we still don't see in a lot of large environments. It's crazy, right? Incident response planning, and then continuous vulnerability management, right, all those to come place. And then my next big one is network security monitoring, right? Even though it's one of those, it's a struggle for a lot of those small, even some medium-sized shops, right? They just don't have the resources.
It's expensive,
Yeah, exactly. But, right, if you can get to that point, that's the road that you want to be on.
Right.
At least even just be looking at your firewall logs. Hopefully you have a firewall log now, right? If you don't, get that, and then start looking at, what traffic is allowed between IT and OT and what's being blocked. And just by doing that, you can find so many, even if you don't find a hacker in the environment, you can find so many operational issues that you can fix before it impacts the plan.
Yeah.
So.
A lot of basics go a long way, right?
It really does. It's like the vast majority of the game, right? And then, sure, you can do all the bells and whistles, and you can talk about a march to zero trust, principles. But at the end of the day, you nail the fundamentals, and that's the vast majority of your risk.
Right. All right. Good to see you. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you. Yeah, it was great meeting you.
All righty. Bye-bye.